Hey everyone, it's me, Rami Marks, your Tangled Yogi out here in Northern California. How are you? Welcome to the Aloha Spirit class. So let's talk about the things that we're going to need for class today. I'm going to be working with my Micron PN pen, a graphite pencil, a white gel pen. This is my new favorite one. This is called the Mizu Love, but you can work with the Signo or you can work with the Sakura white as well, the Jelly Roll. You know me, I'm a Prismacolor girl, so I've got my Prismacolor pencils ready to rock and roll. Now, many of you know that I have my own tiles that I carry at the Tangled Yogi shop at tangledyogi.com. I'll be working with the Genesis tile today. These tiles are super smooth and really wonderful for working with color pencil. So if you want to check out the Genesis tile, you can go over to the Tangled Yogi shop. Now, if you don't have this tile, you can always go ahead and just make a 4.5 by 4.5 inch square on your favorite cardstock or paper, and we can go from there. So with that said, let's get started with the Aloha Spirit class. Okay, so let's get started by building a string here. I happen to have my graphite pencil in my hand, and what you're going to see me do is I'm going to come down from this left-hand corner here in the upper left-hand corner, and I'm going to come out about an inch, maybe an inch and a quarter, and I'm just going to make a little dot right there. And then you're going to see me make just slightly a wavy line. I'm not trying to be perfect with this line here. And I'm going kind of lightly with this pencil. And then I'm going to turn to the other side and do the same thing. So it's just a nice wavy line that we're creating here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start to create an aura. And an aura is exactly what you think it is. It's just an echo line. And I'm just turning it to the side here and creating my aura that's going to connect right over here. Now I'm going to leave this in pencil because we may have some leaves that break the border here, so I don't want to ink anything in until I've had a chance to finish up the rest of it. Okay, and we're going to be doing a really fun tangle in here called Organic, which is a really fun one, and it's got a nice flow to it. So go ahead and make your border, and then when we get started, we're going to start to create a little bit more with the string. Okay, so you're going to see that I've turned my tile so that it's on the diamond here. And we're going to be building a string for a tangle that we're going to be doing called Devo. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in right in here and I'm going to make a fairly large circle. And it doesn't have to be perfect because Devo is not a perfect tangle either. It has kind of an organic feel to it, so feel free to just make your circle however it is. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make two smaller circles, and you can see that I'm kind of layering them here, and even one of them is kind of falling off the page a little bit. So I'm really trying to keep this as organic as possible. So you can see that it's not perfect, and let's just zoom in on that so that you can really see it. Okay, and that's so that we're going to build the Tangled Devo in here, which will be really fun. All right, so go ahead and make those circles, and then we're going to do one more piece to this in a minute. So we're going to do one more component with this, and remember how I told you we were going to probably break that barrier in here? So what I want you to do is I want you to make a leaf-like shape that's going to touch the edge and then come back. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So it's just going to touch the edge and come back. And this is going to be for a really fun leaf tangle that we're going to be doing in there. So you should have a couple of circles and a leaf-like shape in there. All right? So have some fun, and then when we come back, we're going to start tangling. So you're going to see me start to zoom in on these circles that I have in here. And I'm going to start in the center circle first. And what I'm going to start to do is I'm going to go right here into the center, and I'm going to put a nice little circle in here. And you can see that I've picked up my Micron PN pen here. And I'm going to now make some smaller circles that look like petals going around the center. This is a really fun tangle. I love this tangle. It just has such a fun seaside quality to it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to build my starfish-like shape in here. And what that's going to look like is I'm just going to go ahead and start to build one little leg of the starfish right here, and then another, and then another, and then I'll come down here and over here. So I'm going to go over to the next one and do the same thing. So I'm just going right into the center of that circle and doing the petals. And then I'm going to come in and I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I think the fifth one is just going to fall right off the page. You can see that it just did. I'm going to go over to this guy and do the same thing. So I'm just coming into the center of the circle, make your petal, let it go all the way around, and then once again the legs of the starfish. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And you can see I'm not being perfectionistic about it because starfish aren't perfect either, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and build the legs of my starfish here. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to come down from the top and touch, down from the top and touch, turning my tile, and you'll notice that I'm going to let it touch that petal, and then this is going to come down into the middle. Turning the tile, touch, and touch, continuing around, touch, and touch, and one more last time, touch, and touch, so that when you come back around, it looks like it has a starfish-like quality, or even a sand dollar. It kind of has that feeling too. And I like that it's kind of ambiguous that way. It could be either or. So I'm just going to turn the piece and start to bring in the legs of the starfish. And this one I'm going to let it kind of float off of the page here. So you can see that you can really just let it be very organic. You don't have to be perfectionistic about it, which is very freeing, I think. Just turning. And one more time. So now once I've got that, I'm going to start to add a little bit to it, but I'm going to let you pause me here and then we'll come back and add more. So you can see that I'm ready to rock and roll it. And so the next part of this is that we're going to start to add a little bit more to the piece here. And what this is going to look like is I'm going to make these little arcs that come in between the legs here. So just little arcs. And I'm trying to make them about the same size. Let's zoom in on this a little bit more so that you can really see what I'm working on. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm just coming around. There's 5. Let's go over here to this guy right in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Just love the feeling of this. Just really, really soft. Now once we have those little pieces in there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make these little S curves coming outside of it. So it's just going to look like this. So it's just a very delicate S curve with an aura and another aura. S curve, aura, and another aura. S curve, aura, and another aura. Turning the tile, and one more time. So that when we come back around, it really has a nice flow to it. So let's go ahead and do that again right over here. Nice S-curve. And really take your time with these. You can see that this one's overlapping a little bit, so I'm not going to have as much of an S-curve there. Super fun, super easy. So go ahead and finish up this one, and then when we come back, we're going to start to add the outer edges, but they have a little bit of a trick to them. So for the outer edges of Devo here, I'm going to create some wave patterns that are going to go around the piece here. So what it's going to look like is every time I get near where the S is, I'm going to dip in and then I'm going to come back out. I'll dip in and come back out, dip in and come back out. So once again, really building on the idea of an organic kind of tangle here. Dipping in and out. Now once I have that, I'm going to add a little bit of weight right into where the dips are and just puddle it in. Puddling means I'm pooling ink or puddling ink into that area. So I'm just coming in and puddling. Coming around and just really taking your time with it. One more time. Super fun, super easy. And you end up with this really pretty piece, which I just love. It just has a really nice feel to it, doesn't it? So go ahead now around your other two and start to create that kind of wavy pattern. Now here I want to show you kind of how to overlap and underlap here. So you can see that this one is bigger and it's near the top of this one. So I'm going to just start by curving in and then coming out. You can see that I'm going to just let that fall right off the page there. And then I'll do the same thing over here. And you'll notice that I'm not going to really have too much of this Devo showing over here. I might just add a little bit, like maybe right there. But that's it, you know, and it's not going to have too much showing. It really looks like this Devo is overlapping the top of that. So keeping that in mind as you're working on the other side, okay? Have fun. All right, so you can already see that this is starting to come to life here. So we're going to be working with a pattern that I've been, just looking at this pattern for a long time and wanting to incorporate it into a class. So finally we get to use it. This is called Anu leaf, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to just come out to this leaf right over here, and I'm going to ink in the outside border of that leaf. Now once I have that, I'm going to go right down the middle of that leaf and create the kind of the vein that's right in the center. And then I'm going to create a V-like pattern that's going to go right down the center of that stem. And I might even be able to get one more in there. Now, the original pattern doesn't have this, but I did do an aura around mine, so I am going to continue that and do just a really narrow aura around my Anu leaf. Now inside the Anu leaf, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come right here. You can see where those V's are, and maybe I should do it right here so it's really clear. So let's come in right there. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and just aura the space and drop down and in. Now I'm going to add an extra aura right in on the inside just for kicks. And I'm going to come over here and do the same. And you can see they're not going to be the same size. Once again, playing with the idea of it being organic. Over here. And over here. And then I'll come up in here. Now this might be a little bit trickier just because it's such a small space, but we'll make do. And that's really, really fun. I love this tangle. This is called Anu leaf. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to flip over to the other side and I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm just going to come in, build the leaf, divide the space, create the V's, and then I'll go ahead and start doing those auras along the inside. And this is going to be so fun when we start to shade it. This leaf really lends itself well to being shaded. Really comes alive. And when we build our turtle, you'll see that this has a nice relationship with the turtle too. And one more time. You can see that I'm really taking my time with this. The slower you go, the cleaner your lines will be. You know, whenever we rush, it always gives us away, you know. So when I zoom out, look at how fun that is. It's already got a really nice feel to it, very organic and fun. So go ahead and finish up yours, and then when we come back, we're going to start to do a little bit of an aura with some tipple in it. So let's come in and bring in some tipple into this piece. Most of you know that I can't do a tangle without tipple. I just love it so much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to build some random tipple in here. And when I do tipple, I like to vary up the sizes of it. So I'm going to come into these little valleys that you see here and start to throw in some tipple. And I tend to work in threes because that's the way that my teacher taught me. And one of the things that she said was when you work in threes, it's more interesting for the eye. Now, it doesn't always work out that way, but for the most part, I do try. So you can see I'm varying it up and just putting them in. You'll notice that I won't go past my border with these. And later on I can add more tipple if I want to. And I'm also going to come down into these little areas in here and just add a few. And maybe one in here as well. So you can see that that adds a little bit of whimsy into it. I always liken tipple to confetti because I just love the feel of it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and right before the border I'm just going to stop and start to create that aura. So it's just a soft aura. Right in here. And then I'll stop at the border again. Now, once I have that, now is the time where I can come in and I can start to ink in my border because I've got all of this going on at the bottom. So I'm just going to come in right where I started and create my border. And I'll just go ahead and aura that. And then I'm going to turn my piece on its side. And I'll go ahead and aura this side. And you can see that I'm keeping it really light and easy. Now I just realized that I didn't have the opportunity to aura this leaf, so I'm just going to go ahead and aura it, but I'm going to stop when I get to the border. Sometimes an opportunity does present itself. So there you have it. Now we're going to start to work out into the border here. So take your time finishing this up, and then when we come back, we're going to work in the border. All right, so I want to introduce you to a tangle that I'm really enjoying. This is called Organic, and Organic looks a little something like this. We're going to make some circles, and you can see that my circles are going to zigzag a little bit. And then once I have that, let's go ahead and zoom in. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to arc off the piece. So I'm just going to go ahead and arc. And I'm starting that arc on the left-hand side. Now this one over here, I'm going to do on the right-hand side. And then back to the left. And then over to the right. And you can see, for some of you who have been doing Zentangle for a long time, it's almost half of a cadent. Now I'm going to come in right here and I'm going to step off and create an arc, and then step down, and then step down. I'm going to turn my piece and I'm going to come this way. Stepping down, stepping down, stepping down. Coming back to the other side, coming in, and in. And then this side you could continue on, but I'm not, just for the sake of this. You can get the idea that it's going back and forth. It almost looks like a braid. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to do this in the border. So we're going to start right here up at the top, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a circle right here, and you can see that I'm still working with pencil. If you want to switch over to your pen, you can. I've put 2 circles right up at the top here, and this is going to help me to transition this tangle to both sides of the border. So we're going to start just by turning the piece on its side, and you can see that I'm going to work downward, and so I'm thinking about zigzagging again. So I'm going to come over here, and what I'm going to do is I'll start to create a circle here, a circle here, a circle here, and one more over here. Now this circle is kind of up high, but it's fine just for the sake of playing with the tangle. So I'm going to start by going ahead and coming off the side on the left side, and then I'll come over to the right side and connect. Going over to the left, going over to the right, going over to the left. So you can see that when I zoom out, it's got a really nice feel to it. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to start the other side as well, since we're building the tangle here. And so I've got this little circle right here, so I'm going to go ahead and create a circle over here, one over here, and one over here. So I'll go ahead and I'll build off of this by arcing, and then I'll come over here, and then I'll come down here, and then I'll come over here. So let's go back up to the top. So here we are, and I'm just going to arc off of the top. 1, 2, and 3. Coming over to the other side. Now this is tricky here just because we've got a little bit of a piece here, but you're going to see me pick up and come out the other side of it. Turning. So this is going to fall off, but come right back in, stepping down, and stepping down. So I'm arcing, stepping down, and you'll notice that I'm touching that border as I come down. It's creating these really nice little interstices in here, those little kind of weird triangle shapes, and that's just fine because later on we're going to puddle those in. And you can see that I'm also staying really nice and close to this edge in here as well, and we'll puddle those in too. So let's come over here. Now here is where my arc is. You can see it's right there. So I'm just going to go ahead and arc and let it fall off the page. Arc, I'm going to let it touch that. Arc, and I'll let it come right past that circle there. Now I'm going to switch. I'm going to go to the other side. So I'm just going to arc off, let it touch, let it touch, and let it touch. And then that way that kind of completes that little area in there. So now I'm just going to go to this guy right here, arc, 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 and then I'm going to come over here to this guy, arc, 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 and you can see that they're getting smaller and smaller as I go. So over here you can see that I could go ahead and do a little arc in here if I wanted to, and I can let that kind of complete in there and be done with it. So that when I come back, look at how fun that looks. So let's grab our pen and do what I like to call an overdraw. So I'm just going to go back into where my circles were first, and I'm going to ink them in. Now once I have that, I'll come back in and I'll use this as an opportunity to reteach myself the tangle. So it's kind of a way of creating a felt memory inside of your body so that when you come back to do organic again, you'll remember because you will have done it twice. And I think I'm going to give that one extra right there. Coming off the side, inking that in. Really taking your time with your lines, softening in your shoulders. Oops, I missed one. Notice how every time I come up, I touch the border there. I'm going to do one more right there. Coming in. So now, before I come over to the other side, you can see that I have these interstices in here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start to puddle. Remember, we're pooling ink or puddling ink in an area. And just getting right in there. So I'm looking for these kind of funny triangles in which to pool in. Getting right in there. Kind of an odd little space. Same thing up in here. You can see that I'm going to do a little bit of work in my border here. So I'll just come in right here and start to puddle. It does bring a little bit of drama to the outside edge. I often talk about how I love putting black into a tangle because it can take something that's really busy and make it interesting and also give it some grounding. I'm just getting in there, puddling that in. You can see how that's starting to build a lot of drama around the piece. Let's go over and finish the other side. So here we are. We're just going to come in and arc. And we'll get those circles in there first, just the way we started. And once again, following what we did. So you can see I'm touching and coming back and down, touching, coming back and down. And that's another thing about being able to work with a tangle in pencil first, is any places where you might have thought, oh, I really don't like the way that line landed. It gives you almost like a second chance with it. Coming over here. And then once again, coming in and dropping off. I just love the way that this looks. It almost looks like a braid to me. And then looking for those places where you have the interstices. So I'm going to come in and start to puddle in those spaces. Oops, I fell off camera. Sorry, guys. Really just getting in there. And you can see how being able to build that border is so cool. It just has such a nice feel to it, doesn't it? So that when we come out, look at that. Isn't that so fun? I just love that. All right, so you go ahead and do yours. I'm going to do mine and finish up. And then when we come back, we're going to put in our turtle and our word of the year. Okay, so when I'm going to put in my turtle, I'm thinking about leaving enough room for my word of the year here. And so you can see I'm just going to make a little dot right here because I don't want my turtle to go past that area too much. Otherwise, I won't have enough room to put my word of the year in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to start to make almost like a soft square or maybe an ovalish like shape, but it's also going to have a little bit of a wider top on it. So you can see what I mean here. It just kind of has a soft ovalish with a little bit of a wider top in there. And let's go ahead and make that a little bigger. You can see that I've got my pencil in my hand here just because we're building the string for our turtle. I'm going to go ahead and just do a little triangle right up at the top. And then I'm going to do a little triangle coming off the side here. And then a little triangle for his legs back here. These are a little bit smaller than the ones at the top. And then I'm going to give him a little tail. Super easy, super fun. So I'm going to let go of my pencil. And I'm going to start to ink in the creation of the turtle here. And if you need to pause me, you can always pause me. And then I'm going to go ahead and put in, there's his head. A little bit of an arched triangle in there. I love drawing turtles. Turtles are so wonderful. They're just beautiful, delicate creatures, and they really remind us to slow down and enjoy life. So once I have my turtle in there, I'm going to add the tangle Pangea into this. And Pangea is such a fun tangle, and I did a turtle piece when I was in Hawaii earlier this year, and it just lent itself really well to this. So Pangea is kind of these wonky little shapes. And I'm going to start to create another wonky little shape, but you notice that I kind of hugged the first shape, right? So I'm going to do that again in here. I'm going to hug these two shapes with the next shape. And I might be able to get maybe one more in there. So the idea is that, Pangea was what the continents were when they were all together, and then they broke apart, and as they slowly got further and further apart, the idea of Pangea is there. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a tangle inside of this called mirth, and that is going to look like this. So when I'm going to come in and I'm just going to make an arc, and an arc, and at the end of each arc I'm going to put a little triangle and puddle it in. I'll do the same again over here, so I'm just looking for a way to do it, and I think I'm going to turn it outward, so I'm going to go up like this, 1, 2, and 3, and then I'll put a little triangle, triangle, and triangle. We'll do another one right down here, so it's just arc, 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 and then a little triangle with a puddle. And this one, let's see if I can get one in there. Boop, right there. So you can see that that gives him his little tortoise shell kind of feel to him. Inside of the head, and remember, you can always pause me if I'm going too quickly. I'm going to come in and I'm just going to do a little bit of a printemps for his head. I'll do a printemps in his arms. Printemps is just a little spiral, if you've never done this tangle. So all it is just a little spiral. And there you have our little turtle in all of this. So go ahead and finish yours up. Hopefully I didn't go too fast. And then when we come back, we're going to add our word. Okay. So, for me, my original word of the year was flow, and it's been a really nice word to have. But another word that's been coming up a lot for me is peace, and peace in many different ways. Peace in the world, peace within my own country, peace within myself. It's one of those words that I call a companion word to your word of the year. And so I'm going to actually use peace today as part of my word of the year. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in, and I've got my pencil in my hand here, and I'm just going to start to very slowly print in my best ability here the word peace. And I'm doing all caps, and so you can see that I'm really taking my time with this. Now once I've got my lettering in, if there's anything that I want to change, like I think that C might be a little bit too small for me, so I might come back in and redo that C. Lettering is always a challenge for me, but I do love adding words into my Zentangles. So one of the things that I learned is a really nice way of doing lettering is all you have to do on the back of a printed letter is just add a little bit of weight to it. So you can see that I'm just adding a little bit of weight on the back side of each letter, so that when I come in, it now has a little bit more interest to it. Now I'm going to pick up my micron pen, and I'm going to go in the way that I originally did and just ink in my letters the best way that I can. And like I said before, I'm not a letterer, but I do enjoy adding words to my tangles. And this is such a simple way to do this. Now, I did take a really fun lettering class from a friend of mine, and he said, you're not writing your letters, you are actually drawing your letters. So I don't want you to think of this as your handwriting. I want you to think of this as each letter is a tangle. And so there you can see when I go ahead and zoom out there, it has a really nice feel to it, and when we get our colors going, it'll really be nice. Now you could go ahead and ink these in if you wanted to, or you could do some thatching into these. You could add color into your letters. I think for myself, I'm going to be adding a little bit of ink into these, so I'm going to come in and start to puddle. And the reason for that is I don't want my word to get lost. I want it to be front and center. And so you can see that I'm just going to go ahead and puddle mine in. But you can see how easy that is. So, if your word was hope or faith or whatever your word is, you just write it out, and then on the back side of it, you just give it a little bit of weight. And you can see that I did mine in all caps. So go ahead and put in your word, and then when we come back, we're going to add just a little bit more tipple and go into color. So you can see that I've gone and added just a little aura line behind each of these letters after I inked them in, and I feel like it gives it a little bit more pizzazz. Now around my little turtle here, I'm going to add a couple of tipple. So I'm just going to put maybe a tipple over here, and I just want it to feel like it's just very nautical and bubbly. So I'm just going to get in there and just add a couple. I'm not doing too much tipple in here, just a few pieces here and there. So there you have it. I'm going to go and get my color pencils out, and we are going to get started with color. So I love looking at a piece like this and seeing it for what it is right now, but also knowing where it's going to go. And for me, whenever I do shading with Zentangle, it just brings a piece to life and gives it definition. So right now this is very busy, and we're going to just calm it right down with a little bit of color and shading. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start to bring out a color combination. I've got a light blue and a dark blue. Now remember, if you don't have the same colors as me, don't worry about it. Just try to get within the same hue. Okay, so I'm going to be working with the light aqua PC992, and then one of my favorite colors is the peacock blue, and this is PC122, I believe it is. So let's go ahead and grab those, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to sharpen up this pencil, and when you sharpen up a pencil like this, it's going to give you a longer lead in which to work with the piece, and also it's going to help you to fill in the area a lot more quickly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in, and I've got my pencil in my hand here, and I'm going to go with very, very light pressure and do little circles, and I'm working on the side of my pencil. So you can see the way I'm holding it. I'm not holding it traditionally like this. I'm actually way back on it, and I'm just working with the side of the pencil. And the reason why I use little circles is because I want it to look like a mist of color. When you have a mist of color, what happens is that it's definitely a more, how shall we say, saturated, in terms of you're not getting a lot of scratch all the way through. It's definitely got a softer feel to it. So I'm working my way through here and just going around the turtle. But you can see, because I'm working on the side of my pencil, I'm able to fill the areas in a much more efficient way. I'm getting all around here. And I'm just being thoughtful around the word. And maybe this is a really great time to take in the word that you're working around and thinking about the definition of it, thinking about how it applies to your life. I know for me, seeking out peace and refuge in a daily practice has made my life much more rich and fulfilled. So this word is a very powerful word. So I've got this all throughout in here. You can see that it's already starting to get nice and how shall we say, calmed down in this area. Now I've picked up the darker color. This is the peacock blue, and you can see it's pretty well sharpened up here. So I'm going to do what we call a perimeter shade. And that means I'm just going to go around the exterior of the piece, or the perimeter of the piece, and I'm going to start to add in a dusting or a shadow, as it were. Now, the reason why I'm doing this is because it's really going to frame in the turtle, and it's also going to really bring a lot of definition around the word. I'm going very, very lightly with my pencil, and the reason for that is there's plenty of time to go darker later. And I know that a lot of my students talk about being very heavy-handed, so I really want you to think about this in terms of tickling the page with the pencil. You're not pressing hard, you're just dusting it or almost tickling it like you would tickle a baby. You can see that I'm going to turn my tile here and just get right in. I'm just dusting in that area here. So you can see that that's started to get a nice shadow. Now what I can do is I can go in with a medium pressure, and I'm really going to hug the line, that black line that's right there, and I'm not pressing overly hard, just a medium pressure, so we would leave a little bit more space if we wanted to go darker later. So you can see that I'm turning the tile to make it work for my hands. We don't want to fight the tile, and the thing about having such a nice small space to work in is that you can manipulate it to the way that it would make it easier for your body to work on a piece. And this is a great time to check in with your shoulders and see if you're hunching them up, or if there's any place where you might be holding tension, maybe furrowing in your brow. See if you can soften here. Turning the tile. So you can see that it's starting to build a really nice depth. Perimeter shading is a wonderful way to shade, even if you just do a little bit. And all of these tools that I'm talking about here, I'm hoping that you're going to apply them to other pieces that you're working on, so that in the future when you're working on a piece you could go, you know what I really loved? That one piece that I did with Rami, and I wonder if that technique would work right here. And so I hope that you'll practice it and play with it with other pieces. So there we have a really nice kind of perimeter shade. Now, once I've had a chance to do that, I'm going to come back in with that original blue, and I'm going to blur out my lines a little bit. And what I mean by that is I'm just coming to the place where that dark blue is meeting the light blue, and I'm doing little circles over the top of it. And I'm coming in with a medium pressure, medium to light pressure there. And you can see that just by working through with a little bit of that lighter blue, it really does soften up the piece, but it also brings a little bit of electricity into that color. Anytime you take a darker color and bring in the lighter color right next to it, that lighter color pencil can actually pull that color out a little bit, and it can soften the color a little bit. So I'm just going through, and you can see that I'm not working in just a straight line. I'm kind of going back and forth, up and down, just to give it a little bit of organicness. You know, when you're looking at the ocean from an aerial view or from high above, it doesn't have a hard line that is hugging the shore. It has kind of a jagged line. So we're trying to get a really organic feel moving through here. So if you feel like your lines are a little bit solid, just kind of practice bobbing and weaving, coming back and forth, back and forth. So this is really starting to come together. I'm liking the way that that feels to me. You can already see that when I zoom out, look at how just that one color really just softened up the whole piece. And that's really what this is all about, is about just giving it a softening so it doesn't have too much of an edge to it. Now I could play with this for days, but for this video I think I'm going to pause right here, but you can go as far as you want with it and pick up with me in a minute or so. So one of the things that I like to do is called carrying color. And what that means is I'm going to take a color from here and bring it into other parts of the actual composition, and that just gives your eye a place to land. So I'm going to come down here into this area and just very softly start to bring in some of that lighter blue. This is the light aqua that I'm working with here. And you can see that I'm still working on the side of that pencil. And remember, you know, this is always a good place to practice working with these techniques. Try not to be precious with your work and allow this to be a place where you can learn new things. I know that sometimes people will say, I'm not going to do that because they're uncomfortable with it, but this is a really safe place to try new things. I'm actually going to come over here where this leaf is as well. Remember, it's just paper that we're working on. You can always start again or try something new if you don't like the way it comes out. It's an opportunity to play. So once I have that, I'm going to come down right underneath the flower here, and I'm going to create a little shadow. This is that peacock blue again that I was talking about earlier. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do that perimeter shade, but this time I'm hugging the area of where the flowers and the tipple are. So just getting right in there. Creating that shadow. And then once I have that, I can go in a little bit harder right where the line is, just to create a little bit of a glow. Now I'm going to come in with a little bit of that lighter blue, and remember how we were talking about blurring out the edges? So I'm coming back in with that medium pressure and just getting right in there and just blurring out the edges and getting a little bit of electricity in there, which is really nice. So you can see now it almost has this continuation feel of where the water is, and you could even go out onto the edges where our leaf is and give that a little shadow. Same thing over here. And then I'll come in and I'll blur out the edges as well. So you go ahead and do yours, I'll go ahead and do mine, and we're going to carry some color just a little bit more when we come back. But for now, just finish what you're working on. Okay, so I'm going to take some of that color and I'm just going to bring that blue into our little tipple that are inside of our organic. I am not going to do the tipple that is over here this way. I want to have a differentiation between the two. So I'm just going to do it inside of the organic here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come in and slightly shade through half of the piece here. So you can see that I'm just going halfway through each of these tipple, and you can see the way I'm holding my pencil is more traditional now. So I'm just getting in there. So there you can see I've got those going, and I'm going to pick up that really pretty peacock blue and just dust the edge of each of these tipple. So it's almost as if the sea spray is going up into the organic. Let's stay on camera here, sorry about that. And then once I have that, you know me, I'm going to pick back up that same light blue and I'm going to just slightly blur it out a little bit. This gives it a really nice kind of three-dimensional feel so that when we zoom out, look at how that plays so nicely together. Even if you did the rest all in gray, can you imagine how pretty that would be? It would be really gorgeous. So go ahead and finish up yours. I'm going to finish up mine, and then when we come back, we're going to start to shade in organic. So let's get into organic, shall we? I'm going to pick up two colors here in my color pencil set. I have kind of a mustardy yellow brown, and then I also have a really nice kind of deep Tuscan red. So this is the light ochre, and I love this color. This is PC 942. This is such a gorgeous color. And then I also have in my hand here PC 937. This is the Tuscan red. Many of you have heard me talk about this color. This is one of my all-time favorite colors. If you don't happen to have the Tuscan red, you could always use the sienna. Sienna's a really great one, or the terracotta is also a beautiful color. So what I'm really looking for is a mustardy brown and a really nice rich brownish red color. So I'm going to start with the lighter color first, and I'm going to come in, and remember it's sharpened so I have a nice lead there to work with. I'm working on the side of the piece, and I'm going to work in little circles. And you can see that just by doing this, I'm going to be able to fill up this space very quickly. You know, another color that I love in the Prismacolor set is called sand, and that would also be beautiful in this particular part of the piece. So what I'm looking for is something that's very earthy in nature and not too electric. The first time I did this, I used the Spanish orange and I used the pale vermilion together, and those were gorgeous too. But every time I come back to a piece, I always like to come in and try it with different colors because I know that it's going to feel different, and it keeps me interested in what I'm doing. So I really do like that. So you can see that it's just a dusting of color. I'm using very little pressure here. And it's not going to take me that long to fill in the space just by doing these little circles and working on the side of the pencil. So I'm just working my way around. And hopefully you're using your pieces that you have and you're working with me. So little circles, side of the pencil, and just letting yourself be just completely consumed with what you're doing. Really just getting into the zen of it. Getting down into the little nooks and crannies down here. So you can see, look at how that already has created such a nice calming effect on the piece. I'm going to take that same light ochre in here and I'm going to start to dust it into my starfish down here. So I'm carrying the color and bringing it down here. Working on the side of the pencil lead. You can see how quickly that starts to fill in. And just moving through, just like so. So once I have all of that, if you need to pause me here so that you can finish up, you can. Or if you want to watch me before you go on to the next part, that's fine too. So I've picked up my Tuscan red here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to give a shadow to the piece. So what this is going to look like is, let's start in the upper corner here. I want it to feel like it's an overlap and an underlap, right? So I'm going to come in right here where this line is, and I'm going to do a soft dusting of that Tuscan red. Remember how I was talking about tickling the page? I am barely touching the page with my pencil. The best way I could describe it is I'm letting gravity just let the pencil move back and forth, but I'm letting it just barely touch. So I'm just going to go ahead and let that roll back and forth so that we get this idea of a shadow coming across these beautiful organic bands. Just moving through. Now, once I've had a chance to do one side, I'll show you how I'm going to come back in and give this a little bit of definition. You can see I'm going about halfway through. Remember, oh so light, oh so light. Now you can see right here I've got my leaf. I want my leaf to look like it's right on top of the piece. So now I'm going to come in and just start to dust that in with a little heavier pressure. You can see that I'm giving this a little bit more intensity right along that black line, and look at how gorgeous that is. Isn't that so pretty? This is one of my favorite tangles to shade. I'm getting right in there. Coming over to the other side here. And just dusting that in. So go ahead and work on yours. I'm going to continue working on mine. And when we come back, we'll start to carry that color and do a little bit of blurring of the lines too. Okay? I'll see you in a minute. Okay, so let's go ahead and start to carry that color. So I've had a chance to take that Tuscan red all the way down the piece. I'm going to come over here into our Devo here. So let's go ahead and zoom in on this. And I'm going to go ahead and start to dust in to where the Devo flowers are. And you can see that my pencil is pretty sharp. And whenever you're doing this kind of shading, you want to make sure that you have a fine point on your pencil. So you can see that I'm just coming in and dusting in those points. And then I'm going to go to the outer edge as well and do the same. And then I'll come around and do the others as well. You're going to see me start to go for that middle one in here. So you can see it's just a really light dusting of that Tuscan red in here. We don't want these to get too dark. We want them to be really earthy in nature. Come around to the points. Right in here and over here. And I'm going to finish that last one up over here. So you go ahead and do yours. I'm going to finish up mine, and then when we come back, we're going to do some blending. Alright, so you can see I've had a chance to do the shading. Now let's go in and start to do some blending. So let's start with the Devo here. And I'm going to come in with that light ochre again, and I'm just going to start to dust into where I had laid down that Tuscan red. And you can see I'm doing little circles right over the top of where that line is, and just starting to blur out the edges. So I'm just getting right in there and softening up the edges in here. Coming in over here, softening it up. And you'll notice that I'm working on the tip of the pencil right now, just because I'm starting to work in smaller detailed areas. Usually when we're working on the side of the pencil, it's because we're doing large swaths of color. I'm really enjoying how pretty this is. It's just got this gorgeous kind of earthy tone to it. So just getting right in here and dusting that in. And then starting to move over to the side here and stay on camera because that happens every once in a while. So you can see that I'm really getting in here and starting to get these edges nice and clean. So no hard lines of demarcation in here, just really soft color. Now once I've had a chance to go all the way around, I'm going to go ahead and start to come up into the area over here. So you can see that I'm starting to work inside of organic here. And so I've started to add just a little bit of blending up here, but let's start to bring it into organic. And remember, you can always pause me here if I'm going too quickly. So I'm going to start to take that same light ochre and start to dust it into the organic where the Tuscan red was, and start to blur that out. And you can see that I'm going about halfway into the organic just to give it that softness. So just dusting in. And getting right over in here. I love the way Tuscan red blends so nicely with the light ochre. It's one of my favorite combinations. So if you're ever working on another piece and you say to yourself, oh, I really want this to have kind of an earthy tone to it, this is a wonderful combination to put together because they always work out so well together. You can see that I'm just kind of getting that richness to kind of blur through, so that when I zoom out, Look at how pretty that is. Doesn't that have such a unique softness? I really enjoy that. So you go ahead and do yours. I'm going to finish up mine. And then when we come back, we're going to start to work inside of Devo, but in the little petal areas. So I've picked up two purples that I'm going to be working with inside of Devo today. I'm going to be working with Lilac, which is PC956, and I'm also going to be working with the Dahlia Purple, which is PC1009. So I'm going to start with the Lilac first, the lighter of the two colors, and I'm going to zoom in on this here. And you can see that my lilac is pretty well shaded, or rather sharpened up here. So I'm going to come into the area of the starfish here in Devo that has more of a petal-like feature to it. And you can see that I'm just starting to dust into that feature. Now, as I start to move around on the feature here, I'm going to start to fill all of this in. And you'll start to notice that those little areas in here are going to start to come forward because they don't have any color on them. Now, as I start to move through here, I'm starting to think about, how do I want to shade this? How do I want to bring as much energy into those pieces and have them kind of pop forward? So I'm going to pick up that Dahlia Purple, and I'm going to start to work on the outside of each of these petals. So you can see that I'm just going to add a little shading to the outside of each petal, and that's going to start to bring a little bit of drama into it. You can see I'm not going heavy, I'm going pretty light. And I'm just going to do a couple of petals just for the sake of the video here so that you get the idea. Now once I have that, I'm going to go in and I'm going to start to add a little bit more energy into the areas where I'm shading. So you can see that I'm going a little bit darker right around the edge of the piece here. So now I can blur the edges of this just by coming in with a little bit of that lilac and softening it up. And look at how that brings so much electricity to the piece. So go ahead and do yours. I'm going to finish up working on mine, and then when we come back, we're going to carry a little bit of color. Sound good? All right, have fun, breathe, relax, and enjoy what you're doing. I'll see you in a minute. All right, so you can see that I've had a chance to give that a nice dusting of color in there, and I really love the way that those are popping off the page. I'm going to pick up those blues again, so the same blues that we used in the background here, and I'm going to sharpen up that lighter blue, and we're going to start with that first. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into the areas where it almost looks like it has kind of a sea urchin feel to it. And I'm just going to dust in a little bit of that blue. So I'm carrying that same blue that we used before and bringing it back in. And you can see that I'm leaving a little bit of white in the center of the channel in here. So I'm just going to work my way around. And then I'll come in and I will add a little dusting of the blues, the darker blue right on the edge of each piece. And you can see that that's going to bring a really nice energy into this. And then you know me, I love to blur out my edges, so I'm just going to go in and blur this out. So I'm going to go around to all three of these and do just that. So we're going to let go of the purples and the blues for a little while, and we're going to pick up some greens here. I have a really nice olive green. It's a lime peel green actually, and it's PC1005. And then I also have in my hand the Prussian green. This is PC109. Very earthy colors, really fun in their presentation. Now, remember, you just need a light green and a dark green, so don't worry if you don't have those colors. But if you're looking for a really neat combo, these two together are really, really lovely. So I'm going to come over to our Anu leaf here, right here, and I'm going to start to dust in with the lighter color first. Now I'm going to leave the outside edge alone, but you'll see that I'm going to go ahead and shade the whole interior of the leaf. So you can see that I'm letting my inner 4-year-old out again and just going for a really nice soft dusting inside of the leaf. Once I have that, I'm going to pick up that Prussian green that I have here. This is that darker green. And I'm going to start to dust the bottom of these really nice auras that we have inside of the piece here. Now you can see that I'm going light at first. And you'll also notice that I'm leaving a little bit of light up at the top of each aura. Now once I have that, I'm going to come back in at the bottom of each of these and give it a harder push. So I love these colors because they're muted and they have such a nice earthy feel. They get along really well with everything that's on the piece. Now I'll go ahead and I'll start to blur out my edges a little bit. And these two greens work so well together. There are some greens that get a little grainy when you mix them together, but these two really work quite nicely. So I'm going to go over to the other side and do that same thing again. So I love the way that that balances out the piece here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that same green and I'm going to start to focus on my turtle here. So I'm just going to go ahead and zoom in on my turtle, and I'm going to handle it the same way that I just handled those leaves. So I'm just going to come in and start to dust in very, very lightly inside of the turtle, going up towards his head. Over through his arms. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up that Prussian green and start to create a shadow that's right over the legs. You can see I'm hugging the edges of the turtle body here. And I'm going ever so lightly because I don't have to press hard with that Prussian green, that darker green. It's got enough pigmentation to it that we have plenty. I'm also going to come in right above his head here and just give a little dusting. Notice how I'm leaving the light on the edges. Now once I have that, I'm going to go into Pangea over here, and I'm just going to do a light dusting of the green inside of each Pangea. And that gives a really nice definition to our turtle here. And if you feel the need to blend, you can come in and do a little bit of blurring of your edges. And there you have it. So go ahead and finish up yours. I'm going to finish up mine, and then when we come back, we're going to do a little bit of work inside of Devo one last time. So I'm going to continue to work in those greens here. I love seeing green next to purple. There's just something really satisfying about it. So I'm going to go into the areas around our Devo here, and you're going to see that I'm going to dust in with that light green. So once again, carrying color and letting your eye kind of bounce around the piece here is my goal. So I'm just going through and bouncing around. And you can see that it really has a nice appeal to it. The first time I did this, I used a really nice process red next to the purple, and those were a really nice combination, but I'm looking for a little bit more earthiness this time. So I'm going to come back in with that nice Prussian green, and I'm just going to add a dusting right into the center. Coming all the way around. And then you know me, I'm going to blur my edges. So go ahead and blur your edges too. Remember to leave the lightness right on the edge. When you have that lightness as a contrast for the darkness, it just works so nicely together and really gives a nice pop. I'll see you in a minute. So we're going to come back in and start to work with the tipple that's all around the piece here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up my favorite gray. Many of you guys know that I love this gray. This is the PC1065. A lot of you have noticed that I am left-handed, and left-handed people end up having graphite on the side of their hand when they work with graphite. Now, I use the gray last because I don't want to have any smearing or smudging. So if you're right-handed and you really enjoy working with graphite, I want to encourage you to go ahead and work with the materials that you like to work with. So I'm going to come in with my gray. And by the way, if you've got the 50% cool gray or warm gray, it's more taupey, but it's lovely to work with too. So don't feel like you have to have the exact same gray as me. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to dust into the tipple here very, very lightly at first. So I'm going very, very soft. And I'm going halfway through the tipple, and then you'll notice it'll come up about 3/4 of the way and leave a little light source. Now once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a little bit of heavy-handedness with the tipple. So I'm just adding a little bit more of that intensity. Now, some of you know that I really love to work with the white that comes with Prisma. This is the PC938. This is the white Prismacolor pencil, not to be confused with the charcoal color pencil that comes with your Zentangle stuff. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to blur these two into each other. So it almost acts like a tortillon or a blending stump. And then I'll come back in and I'll add a little bit more definition right around the edge just to give it some drama. So you're going to see me go all the way around the piece and work on each of my tipple. Now you'll notice that there's a lot of tipple. I want this to be like a meditation for you. All you have to do is just that shading. So really get into the groove of it and just enjoy yourself. Let yourself be completely consumed with what you're doing. All right, so go around, do your tipple, even the ones that are down here. Now I'm going to leave the centers of the flowers for a little bit later. We've got a little something else we're going to do in there. All right, so I'm really loving the way that those are looking. They just have a very nice subtle feeling to it and don't take away too much from the piece. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come into the center of Devo, right in here, and I'm going to just make a little crescent moon right there, and then I'm going to puddle in the rest of Devo, just in the head of it. And you can see that that really anchors the piece. Look at the difference between here and here. It just gives it a beautiful sheen. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to come in there. And then I'll work on the other as well. So right over here. And it brings in such a nice pop to the center here, which I really love. So go ahead and do yours. I'm going to finish up mine. So some of you might know that I really love to work with the white gel pen. Now I've come across a new pen that I really love. This is called the Misu Love, and it's such a wonderful gel pen because it just goes right over the Prismacolor pencils in a really nice way. So I wanted to introduce you to this pen. Now we're going to be working with the Tipple that we have in this piece, and I'm going to zoom in on the little blue ones first. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a very soft little arc into my my tipple here. Now if you don't have enough room for an arc, you could just use a dot of it and it would work really nicely. And of course my pen is giving me away a little bit because I'm pressing too hard. Remember, with these pens you want to go super light. So I'm going to work my way through here and just add a little bit of a sheen. Now once I'm done with the blues, I'm going to go into the grays too. So you can see that I'm down in my tipple that have the gray, and I'm just going to give it a little sheen. And I know you're thinking to yourself, well, you know, that's a lot of work, but it really does make a difference in the piece. And you want to be mindful of where you're putting your hand, because these pens, they do smear and smudge. So you want to be thoughtful. And then the other place that I'm going to add a little bit of the white gel pen is into our leaves here. So you're going to see me give this a little bit of sheen. So I'll do a little bit of a line and then a dot. And here I might just do little dots if I don't have any room for my lines. But you can see that that gives it a little bit of a spark, almost like a gemstone feel. Which really looks lovely when you zoom out on it. It has a really nice feel to it. So go ahead and do yours. I'm going to finish up mine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for any places where my lines are needing a little bit of a cleanup. This is where, you know, we're getting close to the end and we're thinking to ourselves, okay, well, what's looking like it needs a little bit of my attention? Any place where I might have missed, or if there's a place where I need to add a little bit of intensity on the edge with my black pen. So you can look at your lines and see if your lines are kind of disappearing under color. This is a great place to kind of go back and regroup and look at what you're working on. I can see little bits of white in the background poking through, so you can see that I've picked up my pen and started working on those. So if you see any places where you want to refine it or make it look a little bit cleaner, you can go ahead and do those things now. Now, the first time that I did this class, I used a technique called wallpaper, and many of you have taken classes with me before where you can see I did some printemps in the background, the spirals, just to give this a little bit of interest. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up some of the blue in here. This is that darker blue, and I'm going to zoom in on that space where my turtle is, and I'm just going to give a couple of printemps in here. And I like to go very slow with printemps because it gives you away if you're rushing. And I also like to vary up the size of the printemps because I think it makes it look more interesting. I might come up over here and add a little bit up in here. Give it a little dusting. Maybe up in the corner here. So you can see that I'm being kind of random with it. I'm not going for the whole thing, just a little bit of it. Maybe over here in this corner. And then down over here looks pretty good. So I don't want to go over the top with it, but you can see that that gives the illusion of movement in the water, which is nice. So if you want to add a little bit of wallpaper, pick up your darker blue and you can just go in and add that. So here we are. We have made our way to the end of class, and I just wanted to show you what it looked like when we use different colors. So you can see that my colors over here are a lot more electric and over here a little bit more muted and soft. So I want to encourage you to come back and try again and again and really check out what happens when you change up the composition with a little bit of color. I hope you enjoyed the class. If you did, give us a thumbs up, or even better, go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you want to go over and join us on Facebook, you can join us at the Tangled Yogi Art Community page. We have a really great community of supportive students, and they all share their work, and we learn so much from each other because everybody puts their spin on whatever we're working on. So I thank you for your time. I hope that you enjoyed the Aloha Spirit, and I am Rami Marks, your Tangled Yogi, signing off for now.